Have you ever been in, say, a busy coffee shop? You know, the music's loud, the grinder's going, and suddenly it's not just noise anymore. It feels like, well, like an assault. Or maybe stuck in a packed parking lot, horns are blaring, and you just feel your whole body tense up. Like every single sound, every sight is just cranked way up, while everyone else seems totally fine, just rolling with it.
Yeah, that intense feeling, that sense of being almost bombarded by the environment. It's something a pretty significant chunk of people experience, often without really knowing why.
Right.
And that's the core of what we're diving into today. This really fascinating trait known as the highly sensitive person, or HSP. We're going deep into the work of Dr. Elaine Aron, the psychologist who first identified and did tons of research on this characteristic.
Okay.
It's so important to say this up front. This isn't about being hypersensitive in a negative way or, too emotional. It's actually about a basic biological difference in how some nervous systems are fundamentally wired.
Exactly. And that's our mission here, isn't it? To really unpack what being a highly sensitive person means, maybe clear up some common misunderstandings.
Yeah, the myths.
The myths, exactly. And give you insights from Aron's work and others like Elaine Aron, who works closely with her, so you can not just understand this trait, but actually learn how to, well, thrive with it in a world that often feels, let's be honest, pretty overwhelming. So, okay, let's start there. What actually defines an HSP? Is this like just another personality label, or is it something deeper going on?
Oh, it's absolutely deeper. High sensitivity, or sensory processing sensitivity, SPS, as it's known scientifically, it's an innate trait.
Innate, okay.
Meaning you're born with it. It's part of your wiring, not something you develop or something that needs fixing. And what's really striking is how common it is. Around 15 to 20% of people have this trait.
Wow, 1 in 5, roughly.
Yeah, roughly. And even more fascinating, this same trait shows up in over 100 other species. We're talking fruit flies, fish, dogs, primates.
No.
Yeah. Which strongly suggests it's not some random quirk, but something that actually serves an evolutionary purpose.
Yeah.
It's persisted for a reason. Elaine Aron came up with a really helpful way to understand the core characteristics. She uses the acronym DEEP. It makes it much easier to grasp.
Okay, deep. I like having a framework. So what's the D?
The D is for depth of processing. HSPs just process information more deeply, more thoroughly than others. They tend to pause and reflect before they act.
Okay.
They notice nuances and subtleties that other people just unconsciously filter out. So, for example, they might take a bit longer to make a decision.
Right, I could see that.
But that decision is usually incredibly well considered, often very accurate, because they've sort of subconsciously run through all the details, all the potential outcomes. It's not just overthinking. It's like this built-in capacity for seeing connections and consequences others might miss. Like Aron mentions an example of HSPs noticing a missing fence post in a picture that most people just glance over. Their brain flags it.
So it's like a high-resolution processing system. That sounds like a real strength, but I can also imagine how that deep processing could lead into the next part of the acronym. What's the first E?
Right. The first E stands for easily overstimulated, or over-aroused. And this is probably the aspect people recognize most often, even if they misunderstand it.
Yeah.
Because HSPs process everything so deeply, they hit their stimulation limit much faster and with less input. So things like noisy environments, crowded rooms, intense social events, even being watched while doing something or taking a timed test.
Oh, yeah, timed tests. Stressful.
Exactly. Those things can quickly overwhelm their nervous system. It gets flooded. And you might feel that physically, like sudden fatigue, or mentally, like your brain just shuts down. That need to withdraw and find quiet isn't being antisocial. It's literally a biological need to recover.
That makes so much sense. It's not a weakness. It's just hitting your processing capacity, like your phone battery draining faster when you have 50 apps open, right?
That's a great analogy, yeah. Your internal battery just runs down quicker in high-stim environments. And that leads nicely into the second E in DEEP, emotional reactivity and empathy.
Okay.
HSPs generally experience emotions more strongly, both the pleasant and the unpleasant ones. They're also highly attuned to nonverbal cues, sort of intuiting how others are feeling or how situations might affect people. Sometimes it feels almost like mind reading.
Right.
And this often shows up as deep compassion, a strong concern for justice or the environment, or just the well-being of others around them. But what's really interesting, research actually suggests their brains react more strongly to positive emotional stimuli than negative ones.
It's surprising.
It is. So while they might seem more affected by negative things because they process them so deeply, they also experience joy, awe, love, beauty with incredible intensity. This deep empathy often makes them really insightful. Friends, partners, therapists, artists, people who connect on a profound level.
That totally reframes emotional sensitivity. It's like a superpower for connection, not a liability. Okay, so we have D-E-E-E. What's the S?
The S is for sensitivity to subtleties. This is about noticing the little things in the environment that most people just don't register.
Like what kind of things?
Oh, like a faint smell, a tiny shift in the room temperature, the buzz of fluorescent lights, maybe a scratchy tag on their shirt that would drive them crazy.
The tags. Yes.
Exactly. They're often like the canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah.
They sense tension in a room or maybe notice something slightly off before anyone else does. And this isn't just about being easily bothered. It's a real asset. They might be the first to spot a subtle symptom in a patient or catch a tiny error in a report or sense a shift in team morale at work. They're like natural early warning systems.
Wow. Okay, so deep. Depth of processing, easily overstimulated, emotional reactivity, empathy, and sensitivity to subtleties. Understanding that wiring is huge. But how does someone who's felt too sensitive their whole life start to actually internalize that it's not a flaw? What's the first practical step?
That's a really important question. And it brings us to this fantastic concept that helps explain how this trait interacts with the world, the orchids and dandelions analogy. Researchers Bilsey and Plus came up with this.
Orchids and dandelions, okay.
Right. So highly sensitive people are like orchid children. Orchids are incredibly beautiful. They have amazing potential, right? But they need very specific conditions to thrive. They need the right soil, the right light, careful nurturing. They're highly responsive to their environment.
Okay, that makes sense. Sensitive needs the right care.
Exactly. And here's the fascinating part. Studies show that in supportive, low-stress environments, these orchid individuals don't just do okay, they often excel. They can become more resilient, more successful, even leaders. There was this amazing study with macaque monkeys.
Yeah, you mentioned that, the uptight beat.
Yeah. The naturally more sensitive, uptight infant monkeys, when they were raised by particularly skilled, nurturing foster mothers, they actually grew up to be leaders in the troop.
Wow, that's incredible. So the environment makes a huge difference. And the dandelions?
The dandelions represent the majority of people, the other 80% or so. Dandelions are robust, resilient. They can pretty much grow and thrive anywhere, right? They seem less affected by difficult conditions or childhood stress.
Sturdy.
Exactly. But this is where the double-edged sword for HSPs, the orchids, comes in.
Right.
In high-stress, unsupportive, or chaotic environments, which, let's face it, can describe a lot of modern childhoods with fast pace and high pressure, these sensitive orchid children suffer more than the dandelions. They're significantly more prone to anxiety, depression, physical illness, shyness, behavioral issues.
So a sensitive kid acting out or withdrawing at a noisy birthday party isn't being difficult?
No, it's a perfectly understandable reaction for their nervous system. Elaine Freund talks about hating birthday parties as a kid, especially things like musical chairs where you had to pop a balloon, just sheer sensory overload. It wasn't defiance, it was overwhelm.
That makes so much sense. And it really highlights how our culture often gets it wrong, doesn't it? We tend to value being tough, extroverted, just getting on with it, so high sensitivity gets mislabeled.
Absolutely. It gets called shyness, timidity, insecurity, lack of resilience, especially in boys.
Yeah, I can see that.
Sensitive boys often face immense pressure to toughen up, to suppress that part of themselves, because sensitivity is wrongly equated with weakness in traditional masculinity. Sensitive girls might have emotional expression more accepted, but they can still be dismissed as too dramatic or fragile.
And the result is these individuals feel broken or like something's wrong with them.
Exactly. Instead of being supported for their unique way of experiencing the world, they're pushed to be something they're not. And society misses out on the incredible gifts, the empathy, the insight, the creativity that HSPs bring when they're supported.
Okay, so understanding the trait, the deep model, the orchid dandelion thing, that's crucial. But then comes the, okay, now what? How do you actually live well with this trait, especially in day-to-day life, at work, in relationships?
Right, the practical side. And the really hopeful message from Aron's work is that it's never too late. She emphasizes that any intervention at any age creates a strong path to great benefits.
That's great to hear. It's not like, well, my childhood was tough, so I'm stuck.
Not at all. The very first step is self-knowledge and reframing. Seriously, taking Elaine Aron's self-test that's on her website can be incredibly validating.
Just seeing it laid out.
Yes. Understanding, oh, that's why I felt that way, or that's why that situation was so hard. It lets you look back at past experiences through this new lens, seeing them not as personal failures, but as understandable reactions of your sensitive wiring. It helps rewrite that internal story.
Okay, knowledge is power. Then what?
Then it's about consciously designing a life that works with your sensitivity, not against it. Prioritizing self-care isn't selfish. It's essential maintenance for your nervous system.
Yeah, what does that look like practically?
It means things like making sure you get enough sleep. HSPs often need more than average. Paying attention to nutrition to keep blood sugar stable helps prevent crashes. Spending time in nature is huge. It seems to have a particularly restorative effect on sensitive systems. And creating physical safe spaces where you can go to decompress could be your car, a quiet room, even a bathroom stall for a few minutes. Finding those pockets of quiet.
Those little resets. Yeah, that makes sense. But what about the bigger things like work and relationships? Those can be really demanding.
They can. At work, HSPs are often incredibly valuable, conscientious, detail-oriented, insightful. But the environment matters. If possible, try to negotiate for a quieter workspace or use noise-canceling headphones. Don't be afraid to schedule short breaks during long meetings just to step out. And for situations that you know will be challenging, like presentations or potential conflicts, prepare and practice. Aron suggests even pre-scripting potential responses. That way, if you start to feel overwhelmed, you have something prepared, rather than your brain just freezing up under pressure. It lets your depth of processing work for you.
Planning ahead to manage the potential overload. Got it. And in relationships, that seems like a big one.
Huge. Communication is absolutely key. If your partner is an HSP, it means learning to recognize when their stimulation bucket is full, maybe modulating how you communicate sometimes, and understanding that their need for downtime isn't a rejection of you.
Right, it's not personal.
Exactly. And if you're the HSP, it means taking responsibility for managing your own needs, getting enough rest, taking breaks so you can be present and engaged with your partner. Some couples find it helpful to have a policy like either person can call a timeout during a heated discussion if they feel overwhelmed, and they agree to revisit it later when things are calmer.
Oh, I like that. A pre-agreed pause button.
Yeah, it stops things from escalating when someone's system is overloaded. And socially, it's about understanding that what looks like shyness might just be a preference for deeper one-on-one conversations over big, noisy parties. Or it might simply be overstimulation kicking in. It is absolutely okay to be selective about social events.
Giving yourself permission to say no or to leave early.
Precisely. And actively seeking out other HSPs can be incredibly validating. Just knowing you're not alone, that others experience the world similarly, can make a massive difference in feeling understood and less isolated. Finding your tribe.
And one last point, if your childhood was difficult, it's important to acknowledge that your sensitivity likely intensified those experiences. Working with a therapist who understands high sensitivity can be incredibly healing. It can help process those past wounds and change some of those deeply ingrained stress responses.
So it really comes down to this shift, doesn't it? It's not about trying to become less sensitive or somehow powering through. It's about embracing this fundamental part of who you are.
And then intentionally building a life, tweaking your environment, your habits, your relationships, so that sensitivity can actually be the strength it truly is.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
Your sensitivity isn't a flaw to be fixed. It's a profound lens. It allows you to perceive the world with a richness, a depth, noticing subtleties that others completely miss. It's a gift, truly, when you learn how to understand it and work with it.
So here's a thought to leave you with. What if the world doesn't actually need you to be less sensitive? What if instead it needs you to bring your whole deeply perceiving, empathetic self to the table? And maybe it's time for society to catch up and recognize the immense value in that. We really hope this deep dive encourages you to reflect on your own experiences or maybe understand a loved one better through this lens of high sensitivity. It really can be a transformative journey of self-discovery, one that allows you to thrive.